The bottle came wrapped in stiff paper, no card inside. The paper rasped like sand when I peeled it back. Whoever packed it used more tape than kindness. Underneath, a green label flashed gold when it caught the kitchen light. Limited edition. Fancy enough to make a man feel small for not opening it on the spot. I ran a thumb along the wax at the cork. Smooth, sealed, new. Someone wanted that part noticed. The shipping box sat open on the table. I flattened the flaps and studied the label the way I'd read a fence line for weak posts. My name, my street, a red machine stamp. October 21st, 4:12 p.m. The date wore my birthday like a grin. No card, no dad, no anything. Happy birthday to me, I told the empty room, which took the compliment with its usual grace. I took the bottle by the neck and set it upright. The clock over the stove ticked loud enough to be heard over a radio that wasn't on. 30 years of working hands made the glass look unbothered by mine. I haven't had whiskey since the heart attack. That was Linda's last rule and the doctor's first. 3 years clean. I still keep the 2 Good Rocks glasses because throwing them away would feel like breaking a promise she didn't ask me to make. I checked the shipping label again, then reached for the phone. The delivery company printed a number on the underside of the flap. I dialed. Thank you for calling. Press 2 for tracking. A woman's voice, bright and distant. I pressed 2. Beeps crawled through the line. Agent, I said. A pause. Then a man came on who sounded like he'd been told to sound helpful. This is Mark. May I have the tracking number? I read it off the sticker. Paper crackled under my thumb. And the sender's name? That's what I'm calling about. Sir, I can confirm what's in the system. One moment. Okay, sender listed as R. Brooks. He waited like he'd delivered good news. Do you have a first name, Mark? Initial only, sir. That's so. Anything else I can? No, I steadied my voice. That's plenty. When I hung up, the kitchen got bigger and smaller at the same time. I slipped the shipping label from the box and laid it flat on the table like a specimen. Ridges from the sorter wheels ran across the paper. The stamp stayed red and pleased with itself. Richard knows I don't drink. He sat through the lecture in the hospital, eyes on his phone, thumbs moving like he was texting the cure. Maybe he thought I'd forgotten the rule. Maybe he thought I'd break it for him. Maybe he didn't think at all. Old habits came back. I took out a pen and wrote on the edge of the label. Received, 6:41 p.m., unopened. Not for drama, for memory. I've learned memory needs help. The bottle went on the table. The label stayed beside it, square to the grain. I made coffee I wouldn't finish and took it black. The first sip tasted like the inside of a cold tin cup. By the back door, the October evening pressed its face to the glass. Porches up and down the block were lit already. Mine threw a dull rectangle across the stoop. Somewhere a dog barked at a thing that knew better than to answer. I picked up my phone, scrolled to Richard's name, and stared at the gray photo that meant he'd never bothered to set one. The call button glowed like a dare. I pressed it. 2 rings. Then his voice, clipped, recorded long ago when we were both still pretending this was a season, not a weather pattern. It's Richard. Leave it. I listened to the tone, said nothing, and let the line run quiet. 30 seconds is longer than you think. When the system beeped, I spoke. Rich. The package arrived. Thank you. I ended the call. Then I reopened the voicemail app and deleted the message. If a man is going to keep a record, he should be sure he wants it on both sides. I poured water into the sink and watched steam rise from the drain. The bottle looked back at me from the table with that green-gold eye. Linda would have laughed at the color and told me not to be dramatic. It's just a bottle, Sam, she used to say. She was almost always right. Almost. My heart gave a quiet thud that reminded me it had opinions of its own. I put a hand to my ribs until the feeling passed. Loneliness isn't loud. It sits on the chair beside you and waits for you to notice. I noticed. I wiped the bottle's base with a dish towel and set it on a cork coaster. The rocks glasses stayed in the cabinet. Some rules you keep because you're stubborn, some because they saved you once. I put the shipping label into a clear sleeve I use for old insurance cards and slid it under a magnet on the fridge next to Linda's checklist for winterizing the gutters. Evidence belongs where I can see it without thinking too hard. All at once, the house did the thing old houses do at dark. It settled into itself. The fridge motor hummed. The heating duct clicked as it warmed. The clock above the stove kept time for people who needed reminding that time was moving with or without them. I stood at the table with my hands on either side of the bottle, then stepped back. I wasn't going to drink it. I wasn't even going to open it. But I wasn't going to shove it in a closet and pretend it hadn't arrived either. Keeping something in sight is a way of telling yourself you're not afraid of it. Wasn't expecting a gift, I said to the room, let alone this. My phone buzzed on the counter. Nothing personal, just a spammer offering me windows for a house that already had enough. I let it buzz itself tired. I carried the bottle to the edge of the table and set it down again, this time with the label facing the wall. Out of the corner of my eye, I could still see the red stamp on the fridge. October 21st, 4:12 p.m. It felt like a clock had started somewhere I couldn't see. The doorbell didn't ring. No laughter rolled up the walk. The only thing moving was the second hand. I turned off the kitchen light and listened to the tick, steady as a metronome that belonged to someone with better rhythm. The bottle held its glint in the dark. I left it that way. The clock kept counting. I let it. I buckled the bottle into the passenger seat like it could sue if I hit a pothole. The road up to Edward's place runs under maples that hold on to their leaves longer than scents. They rattled against each other, dry as paper bags. Edward's porch light snapped on when my tires hit his gravel. He opened the door already smiling the way men do when they've decided to greet you before they know why you came. "Sam," he said, wiping sawdust off his shirt with a hand towel that didn't stand a chance. "You picked a fine night to drop by." "Brought something I can't use," I said, lifting the bottle. "Figured you would know what to do with it." He whistled low at the label. "That's not hardware store stuff. Came today. From Richard." Edward's eyes flicked from the bottle to my face, measuring the distance between the two. "He knows you're off the stuff." "He knows," I said, "but a gift is a gift. You make it a good one." He took the bottle gently like it might bruise. "Cork's still sealed." "Hasn't been anything else," I said, and that made him laugh. "Come in," he said. "At least let me put this where it won't roll off a counter." I followed him through the entry that always smells like pine cleaner and old rope. He set the bottle square on a shelf, label out, then looked at it like it might tell us what to do next. "You want a taste of coffee instead?" he asked. "I'll take the smell," I said. "Doctor says that's free." The front door creaked behind us. "Evening, Mr. Carson," a voice called. I turned. Shay from 3 houses down, jacket zipped up to her chin, dog tugging a leash. "Evening, Shay," Edward said. She pointed with her chin at the shelf. "Celebrating something?" "My stubborn birthday," I said. She grinned. "Happy one, then." Her eyes landed on the waxed cork. "Looks new." "It is," I said. "Nice to see people still marking the day." She tugged the dog. "Night, gents." When the door shut, Edward glanced at me. "Witnesses already." "Good," I said. "I'm old-fashioned. I like things to have eyes on them." He poured 2 coffees anyway and brought mine black. We stood by the shelf like 2 men admiring a finished fence line. "Rich sent this," he said, testing the words. "That's supposed to mean something?" "It does," I said. "Just not the kind you drink." He studied me a second longer, then nodded once. "Then I'll say thank you for the thought, and I'll do the opening when the night earns it." "Make tonight earn it," I said, and the words came out drier than I intended. He smiled into his cup. "You still do straight lines better than most." We talked an easy 10 minutes about gutters and the church boiler that limps every November. Edges of life that don't cut when you pick them up. I felt a small knot loosen between my shoulders. Giving a thing away is a cleaner feeling than shoving it in a drawer. On the way out, I paused by the shelf and looked the bottle over one more time. Green and gold, patient as a snake in a sun patch. "Treat it right," I said. "Sam," Edward said, "you know I will." Back in the truck, I let the radio find static and then nothing. The night had that bead of cold on the nose that tells you frost is close. Halfway home, the phone lit up in the cup holder. "Richard," across the screen like a headline. I let it ring once more than I wanted and answered. "Happy birthday," he said, like the words had a sharp edge he didn't want to cut himself on. "You get my gift?" I did. "What'd you think?" "It's a handsome bottle." "Did you taste it?" I watched the dashed lines run under my headlights. "No, a beat. Come on, Dad. One glass won't kill." "I gave it to Edward," I said. "He'll put it to good use." Silence. Not empty, engine idling in a closed garage kind of silence. "You gave it away," he said finally. "I don't drink." "You could have made an exception." "Doctor didn't write any exceptions." "Right," he said. The word landed flat. "And Edward deserves what I sent you." "He deserves a good night," I said. Another pause, longer, like he was waiting for me to take it back. When I didn't, his tone cooled 2 shades. "Maybe I misjudged," he said. "Maybe," I said. The line clicked. Dead air. I held the phone to my ear anyway, listening to the part where a son might decide to say something else and then not say it. Nothing came. I pulled over into the lot by the ball fields and parked under a lamp that made everything look cleaner than it was. I set the phone face down and watched my breath fog the windshield until the defroster won the argument. Relief is a light coat. Dread is a wet one. Mine soaked through as the quiet settled in. The screen lit again with a voicemail notification I didn't open. Not because I was afraid of the words, because I already knew their shape. I wrote the time on the notepad I keep by the shifter. Habit. Names and times hold people honest when memory decides to be helpful instead. I drove the long way home. Porches were still warm with light. At the corner, Shay lifted a hand as she and the dog crossed. I lifted mine back. Witnesses, I thought again, and felt better than I had a right to. At my house, the kitchen clock said what it always says when you're late to nothing. I set my keys in the ceramic bowl Linda bought at the craft fair, then stared at the empty spot on the table where the bottle had stood. The room looked taller without it. The phone trembled across the counter from a fresh buzz. I didn't reach for it. I let it rattle against the laminate and go quiet. I poured tap water into one of the old rocks glasses and sat with it, cold against my palm. The glass kept catching the light like it remembered another job. "Make it a good night," I'd told Edward. "Make it one I can live with," I told myself. The room answered the way rooms do, with a clock hand and a hum from the fridge. I listened until the hum sounded like a road, and the road sounded like a choice, and the choice sounded like something I'd already made. When I stood, the phone screen was dark again. I left it that way. The line had gone dead. It could stay dead until morning. I turned out the light. The house settled. The night held its breath, like it was waiting to see what tomorrow would do with us. The church foyer smelled like percolator coffee and floor wax. Voices ricocheted off the corkboard where announcements went to retire. I came for the supper, because you should show your face where you pray, even if you don't feel prayed for. Edward spotted me first. "Sam," he said, easy as a handshake. "Save you a seat. Chili's not bad tonight." "Chili's always honest," I said. "The rest is negotiable." He tilted his head toward the bulletin table. Richard stood there, flipping papers like a man sorting a deck he'd already stacked. He looked up, put on the public smile that doesn't touch the eyes, and drifted over. "Dad," he said loud enough to belong to the room. "We were just talking donations. Community supper always needs a generous hand." Someone laughed at nothing. Richard lifted the bulletin, read a line in a tone meant for slow students. "Those who can, please contribute. You know how that works, right?" I kept my face still. "I do my part. News to some of us." He let the paper crinkle, letting that sound do the work. Edward touched my elbow. "Don't let him set the terms," and then stepped half a pace back so I could make my own choice. Shay slid in with her dogless jacket and that neighbor energy that keeps a place from getting mean too fast. "Hey, Sam," she said to the space in general. "Saw you drop by Ed's last night. That bottle looked brand new. Nice gift." "Unopened," I said, voice level. "Gave it to him as I found it." "Right," Shay nodded. "Seal was clean as teeth." She said it to me, to the circle, to whatever record was being kept by ears. Richard smiled without heat. "Generous to pass along what you didn't want." Truth is simpler than that, I said. I quit whiskey. Not my judgment. A few heads turned. Somebody coughed into a napkin. Edward's mouth twitched like he wanted to smile but knew better. Richard leaned in, not closer, just heavier, so his words would fall on me first. Funny thing about gifts, he said, they're meant for the person they're sent to. They're meant to be right for the person they're sent to, I said. He let the silence spread, then chuckled like I'd told a harmless lie. Dad never cared for nice things when they weren't his idea. He offered the room. Edward, you'll at least appreciate it. Edward kept his hands in his pockets. I appreciate what's right in front of me, he said. It was clean and fair and not the fight Richard asked for. By the coffee urn, the steam hissed. The sound made the pause feel longer. People pretended to be busy with styrofoam cups. Richard lifted the bulletin again, gave it a little shake. Tell you what, he said brightly, I'll cover Dad's share this month. Wouldn't want the church to suffer for his diet. The laugh came cheap and a few folks paid for it anyway. I felt the heat crawl up my neck. I counted 4, then 8, the way the cardiologist taught me when the pulse gets ahead of the facts. I write checks you don't see, I said quietly. Not everything needs a parade. So private generosity, he said, nodding like a teacher finally coaxing the answer. How convenient. Meanwhile, and now his voice pitched to Carrie, that bottle I sent for his birthday, he couldn't be bothered. Shay tried again. He gave it to Edward. Still sealed. I saw Richard turned her way, pleasant as a snow shovel. Appreciate the neighborhood update, but we're talking about intent. I just told you mine, I said. He tipped his head like he'd found a hair in the soup. Sure, and I'm sure everyone here believes you. He didn't look at them when he said it. He looked at me, because that was the point. A deacon slid past with a tray of cornbread. The smell of butter didn't soften anything. I watched my hands, still, not fists. I watched Edward's jaw, tight, not reckless. I watched Richard perform concern like it was a hymn he'd practiced. Rich, I said, even and low. You want the church to get its due, write your check. Don't spend mine in public. He raised both palms. Just trying to celebrate you, Dad. Try quieter. A laugh snuck out of somebody and died fast. Richard let the moment breathe, then stepped closer to the circle so he could step out of it. Anyway, he said bright again, enjoy the chili. He patted Edward's shoulder like blessing livestock and walked away before anyone could put words in the space he left. The room didn't follow him, but the conversation did. It moved on without me, the way crowds move around a pillar and forget it kept the ceiling up. Shay reached for the coffee lever, then didn't press it. For what it's worth, she said under the hiss, I know what I saw. Worth a lot, I said. Thank you. Edward angled himself between me and the rest and spoke low. You want to leave? I tested the weight of it. Humiliation is a bright thing at first. Then it cools and turns to resolve you can pick up without burning your hand. No, I said. I'll finish my bowl. Then I'll get it, he said and moved off. I took a step toward the bulletin table, read the line about donations, same line as last year and the year before, and thought about all the ways money gets used as a mirror. It shows you what somebody wants you to see. Richard reappeared at the edge of the foyer just long enough to catch my eye and give the smallest shrug. Not apology, ownership. Shay touched the crook of my arm. You good? I'm steady, I said. Might start writing more things down. That bad? That useful. She nodded like she understood the difference and drifted toward the chili. I stood where I could see the door, the coffee, and the bulletin in one glance. People kept their conversations in their hands like hot plates. Edward returned with a tray. Sit, he said, not asking. We ate without ceremony. The chili was honest. The room quieted the way rooms do when they've decided to pretend they didn't just watch something. When the bowls were empty, I set my spoon across mine like a line drawn by a man who still knew where to put one. Richard's laugh floated from somewhere I couldn't see. I rose. The hush that follows a small scene settled like dust you don't wipe up right away. I let it settle on me. Then I walked out without looking back. The foyer kept its smile and its bulletin and its coffee hiss, patient as a judgment. The door closed soft. The hush stayed inside. The ER doors whooshed like they were tired of dramas that arrived late. Linda stood there white-knuckled around her purse strap. "He dropped," she said, 10 minutes after a toast. One sip. We followed the gurney as far as the swinging line that says family here, panic there. A wall clock glared 9:47 p.m. over the triage desk, numbers that felt like they were taking attendance. A nurse in blue scrubs clipped questions in the air. Name? Robert Carson. Relation? Friend, I said. Close. What happened? One pour of whiskey with dinner, Linda said. He went dizzy, then down. The nurse's pen hovered. Source of the alcohol? From me, I said steady. A birthday bottle my son sent me. I don't drink. I gave it to Robert unopened. Her eyes flicked up. Unopened when you passed it? Still sealed, I said. Witnesses can say so. Linda nodded, fast. He unsealed it at home. The nurse scribbled. We'll run tox. Sit tight. A guard with a clipboard eased over as we were herded to chairs. Next of kin needs to initial, he said, pushing the pen toward me. Consent to treat. I'm not next of kin, I said. His wife is. Linda reached. The guard pulled back, looked between us like we were trying to cheat a test. He set the form for her anyway, pen scratching a tired signature line. Strange how it got here, he muttered, eyes dropping to the clipboard. I let it pass. The clock ticked loud enough to hear. Somewhere a monitor chimed a flat, professional warning. Linda sat, hands clasped like she was holding the room shut. Sam, she said, not looking at me, you didn't pour anything from that bottle before you took it over. No, you didn't, she faltered, then forced it out. You didn't add anything, right? The question stung, not because she meant it to, but because fear turns even good people into detectives. Linda, I said soft, I quit whiskey, not the truth. She swallowed and nodded, ashamed of a question that had a right to exist. A nurse leaned through the doors. Mrs. Carson? They're stabilizing his rhythm. He's in a unit now. We followed a hallway that smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee to a small ICU room bright enough to erase shadows. Robert looked smaller under the web of lines, his chest doing its slow work. A machine kept count with a glow that didn't care how we felt about numbers. Mr. Carson, the ICU doc said, glancing at the chart, then us. We're seeing signs that suggest a toxin. Plant-derived is possible. We've started protocols. Toxicology panel will flag specifics by morning. Poison, Linda whispered, as if the word could hear her. We don't speculate, the doctor said, firm but not unkind. We test. Who brought the bottle? I did, I said. Gift from my son. I handed it to Robert, sealed. He opened it last night. We'll need the brand, the batch, anything on the label, the doc said. If there's any left, don't touch it. I saved a small pour in a jar, I said, the sentence forming before I could decide whether to keep it to myself. For a taste I didn't take. The doctor's eyes moved to me for a beat. Keep it cold. Don't move it. If we need a sample, PD will coordinate chain of custody. The phrase sat heavy between us. Chain of custody. I saw my kitchen table. I saw the shipping label still in the open bin. My name, my address, Richard's neat block letters. The nurse's pen clicked like a metronome, and I knew I'd be copying everything down when I got home. Robert drifted, then stirred. His eyes didn't quite open. Sam? Gravel voice, a dry riverbed. I'm here, I said. You're all right where you are. He exhaled through his nose, the smallest yes. 2 minutes, the nurse warned, and I stepped back because rules are what keep rooms like this from tearing. Outside the glass, Linda touched my sleeve. I'm sorry, she said, for asking before. You're scared, I said. Fear swings at the nearest thing. It shouldn't have swung at you. It swung at the bottle, I said. We'll aim it better by morning. We sat in 2 wrong-sized chairs in a waiting island that pretended to be furniture. A volunteer tried to offer coffee. We shook our heads together. The phone in my pocket pulsed. Richard on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Seconds later, the red dot glowed like a small warning light. I stepped into an alcove and played it on speaker low. "Hey," his voice, clean and unhurried. "I heard about Edward's dad. That's rough. You know you should have checked the bottle before you pawned it off, right? Could have saved some trouble." He let the sentence hang like it was doing me a favor. The message ended. I didn't move. "Trouble," I said to the wall. "That's one word." Linda came up beside me, reading my face before the phone. "Richard? What did he say?" "That I should have checked the bottle." She closed her eyes. "He knows you don't drink." "He knows," I said. We sat again. I wrote times on the back of a triage handout. 9:47 p.m. intake clock. Call from Richard just after 10. I wrote toxicology by morning because the doc had said it, and I wanted to see the words get smaller on the page. "Don't let him pay for my mistake," I wrote last. Then I underlined it until the paper almost tore. A nurse waved us back for a minute more. Robert's color had improved half a shade. Monitors kept their quiet oath. I stood by the rail and let my hand rest there, not touching him, just sharing the same piece of air. "Rest," I said. He didn't answer, but sometimes not answering is obedience. When the minute ended, I stepped out. The hallway felt longer. The wall clock now read 10:31, and for the first time in years I respected a clock for telling the truth. My phone buzzed again, same number. I watched it ring. I let it stop. I set the phone face down beside the chair and didn't reach for it. The ICU doors hissed shut behind a nurse with a tray. The red voicemail dot waited like a patient eye. I didn't press play. I didn't call back. I kept the message between us, a line he could hold and I wouldn't. I set the mason jar on my kitchen table like it could hear instructions. The whiskey turned the glass a warm gold, innocent as a photograph. I slid the shipping label beside it, my name and address staring back like a witness too polite to interrupt. Zip bag, Sharpie, tape. I wrote, "Leftover poor, Dalton," on a blank sticker because labeling calms the hands. Linda's earlier question still rang in my head, but I kept the movements boring and exact. The jar went into a gallon bag. The label got its own. Then both into a paper sack with handles, because evidence should not look like a gift. Gary's lab sat past the last streetlight, a squat building that always smelled faintly of bleach and hay. He opened the side door before I knocked, lab coat over a sweatshirt, eyes asking questions his mouth didn't. "You got it?" "I've got it," I said, handing him the bag. He locked us into a small intake room, stainless table, scale, date stamps that had seen too many tired nights. He set the jar down, rolled it a half turn without unsealing the bag. "We'll treat your kitchen like a scene," he said. "We note, we seal, we don't improvise." "I don't improvise anymore," I said. "Not with this." He glanced up. "You look steady." "I'm scared," I said. "Steady is what I can do about it." He nodded like that was the right answer. "Walk me through origin." "Limited whiskey, mailed to me by my son. I don't drink. Gave it to Robert unopened. I poured this taste before I drove it over. Didn't drink it." I set the separate bagged label on the table. "That came taped to the box." Gary slid the label toward him with 2 fingers, reading. "We'll photograph it with the jar for linkage, but the bottle and box will matter more if this goes official." "It's going official," I said, "one way or another." He raised an eyebrow, then reached for the evidence kit. "Okay, change starts now." He snapped on fresh gloves. I watched the ritual. Quick photo with a battered point and shoot, jar and label side by side. My hand holding today's Times-Union front page in the edge of the frame because dates leave shadows. He slid the jar's bag into a larger clear sleeve, then pressed an evidence seal over the mouth. His pen scratched. "Case, temp/sample, whiskey pour/intake, 11:28 p.m. /tech, G. Nolan." The numbers steadied me more than coffee ever had. "If this is poison, we name it," I said, quiet because the room asked for quiet. "We name it," he echoed, "and we don't whisper." He logged it in a spiral notebook, block letters neat. "Leftover pour received from S. Brooks. Shipping label co-bagged. Seal placed at 11:28 p.m. He held it so I could read. We'll keep custody tight. If the state lab wants a split sample, we'll have the paperwork ready. A door buzzed in the hallway and went still. Somewhere a compressor kicked on. The lab turned its own pages. Any chance this is nothing? I asked. There's always a chance, Gary said, but your gut usually writes clean reports. I let air out slow. Fear sat down and put its hands on its knees. He carried the sealed bag to a small fridge, opened it, and paused. Before I chill it, you want a photo for your records? No flash, one frame, no codes. Just the seal and the time, I said. He set the bag on the table again. I took my phone out and snapped a single shot with the time strip centered. 11:28 p.m. No second angle, no artistry, just the one proof cue a tired brain can keep. My phone buzzed in my hand as I lowered it. A preview flashed. Richard, we can fix this if you stop overreacting. I didn't open it. I flipped the phone face down and set it away from the bag. Gary clocked the move but kept his mouth shut. He slid the bag into the fridge and shut the door like you shut a drawer with a secret in it. I'll run it tonight, he said. If I get anything that screams, I call you no matter the hour. Otherwise, early morning, he printed a small intake slip and tucked it into a manila folder. No copies. I'll staple the original to the lab notes when they exist. Chain only breaks if we let it. We won't, I said. He stripped his gloves, dropped them in a bin. You look like a man who wants to stay and watch the machine spin. I've stared at enough machines, I said. Call me when it stops. We stepped into the narrow lobby that tried to be welcoming and failed. A vending machine blinked a digital 12 that wasn't the hour. My phone buzzed again on the counter, muted but pushy. I didn't flip it. Gary leaned his hip on the desk. You told the hospital there's a leftover pour. I told the doctor I had some left. He told me not to move it. I moved it to you. I held his eyes. Privately. That privacy ends if this is what you and I think it is, he said. You ready for official? I'm ready for the truth to stop being just my word. I picked up the paper bag, now empty of anything worth stealing. Gary nodded at the door. Go home through the neighborhoods, not the highway. Fewer eyes. I'll text running when it's in the rig. You'll sleep worse, but straighter. Worse and straighter, I said. That's about the shape of the night. Outside, the lot was a square of cold. I buckled the empty bag out of habit and then laughed at myself. A small sound that didn't change the air. The dashboard clock rolled a minute forward I didn't get back. At a light, a car idled 2 lanes over with music you could feel more than hear. I watched the crosswalk signal count down, red hand blinking its warning to no one in particular. Countdown is just time with manners. Back home, the kitchen had the indecency to look exactly like it always did. I opened the fireproof box and laid in a note card. 11:28 p.m. Sample sealed at Gary's. Label co-bagged. I added, Richard text, we can fix this. Unread. The words looked like they belonged next to deeds and insurance. The phone buzzed again, same name, same tone. I typed 3 words I didn't send. The truth stands. Then I deleted them, because sometimes the strongest thing you can do to a lie is starve it. Gary's text came 10 minutes later. Running. I could smell the lab in that single word. The hum, the click, the cold. I stood in the doorway between kitchen and hall and let the house breathe. Resolve beat down the fear until it sat still. I turned the phone face up long enough to see Richard's thread stacked and unopened. Then I put it in the drawer with the takeout menus and shut it like closing a gate. I locked both doors, turned the deadbolts I'd installed myself, and listened for anything that wasn't the usual. The quiet held. On the table, the note card waited for morning. The empty paper bag sat on the chair like proof that something had left me and didn't plan to come back. I turned off the light and let the dark do its job. The diner's bell gave that tired jingle that always sounded like it needed oil. I took the counter stool closest to the wall clock so I wouldn't have to ask what time it was. 9:12 a.m. The second hand ticked like a small hammer. Coffee? The waitress asked. Strong as you got, I wrapped my hands around the mug and held still. If Gary called, I wanted to be somewhere the phone could find me. A spoon clinked on the plate to my right. Deacon Miller slid onto the neighboring stool without asking. The man wears concern like a suit. "Morning, Sam," loud enough to include the next 3 stools. "Heard about Edward?" "Terrible. Did you?" He lowered his voice a fraction. "Check the seal on that bottle before you handed it off?" "I handed it sealed," I said. He stirred a sugar he didn't add. "Because sometimes folks think something's sealed, then it's, you know." He made a twist in the air with 2 fingers. "It was sealed," I said again. "I have eyes." Across the counter, 2 regulars went quiet in that way that pretends it isn't listening. "Just asking," the deacon said, palms up. "People are worried. Carelessness can really—" "Concern isn't a rumor with makeup," I said. The waitress arched an eyebrow I didn't deserve, and the deacon decided his toast needed immediate attention. I let the coffee work on my hands. My phone hummed against the counter. "Leah." I stepped outside into air that remembered winter. "Frank," she said. "Richard's talking to people. He says you gave away a bottle without thinking, that you're making a scene. He's welcome to talk to the police instead. He says you won't meet him." "I won't," I said. "If he wants to help, he can stop performing and start answering questions." "I don't know what to do." Her voice folded on itself. "I don't want to take sides." "You don't have to take a side," I said. "Just don't carry one." Silence. Then, he asked whether you ever checked if something could be wrong with the whiskey. "He knows I don't drink," I said. "He knows why." "I know," she exhaled. "I'm sorry." "Leah," I said, keeping my voice even. "If anyone asks you to delete messages, don't." "I won't." A beat. "Call me when you hear from the lab." "I will." We hung up. I stared at my reflection in the diner window. Same man as yesterday, just sanded down at the edges. I can outwait a storm, but not a lie. I made a slow loop around the block because sitting turns worry into furniture. Outside the church thrift shop, Linda stepped out with a box of winter scarves. She set it down when she saw me. "Any word?" she asked. "Not yet." "Then do me a favor," she said, eyes flicking over my shoulder toward the diner. "Stay scarce today. People are upset. They don't need someone to point at." "I'm not here to be pointed at," I said. "I know, but I can't keep correcting the room and take care of Robert at the same time." "That isn't your job," I said. "Today it is," she said, soft but firm. "Please." I nodded. "I'll be quiet in a way they can't mishear." She squeezed my arm once and hurried off, tires hissing as a car pulled to the curb. I watched her go and reminded myself that fear has its own grammar. It makes short sentences and bad decisions. Back at the counter, the deacon pretended I was new. "Say, Sam," he said, "where'd that bottle come from anyway?" A flash in my head. The deep green label, the wax top, my name and address on that shipping label. Richard's neat block letters. I didn't give the vision space to grow. "From my doorstep," I said, and took my coffee to a booth where I could make smaller targets. The phone stayed face up long enough to show me what it wasn't. Gary didn't call. He's not a man who misses. He's a man who arrives exactly when he promised, or tells you why he won't. I paid cash and walked out just to give the room fewer opportunities. Outside, the wind had picked up. 2 teenagers pushed past laughing, the sound unbothered by other people's lives. On the sidewalk, I ran into Mrs. Conrad with her thermos steaming up her glasses. "We're praying," she said, voice low. "For Robert. And for you." She glanced toward the diner. "There's talk." "Talk is free," I said. "Truth costs paperwork." She almost smiled. "Well, if you need soup, I have too much. I'll take you up on that when this is done." "If this ever ends," I didn't say. The phone buzzed in my pocket again. Not Gary, Richard. I didn't open the screen. The door to this part of the day needed to stay shut. I drove the long way home, 2 extra turns to avoid the grocery lot where everyone's schedule overlaps. In my kitchen, the note cards sat like patient classmates. I added one. Diner, 9:12 a.m. Deacon asked about seal. Leah called. Richard, talking to people. Then I set the pen down before I wrote what I wanted to write. On the porch, the swing creaked without moving. Houses are fluent in small threats. I made tea I didn't drink and stood by the window, the street arranging itself into its usual lies. Quiet, decent, nobody's business. The phone lit up with a new notification I couldn't ignore even if I wanted to. Neighborhood group thread pinged the screen. Prayers for Edward. Some folks should have been more careful with gifts. Unknown number ending in -1432. I let the message sit there like a fly I refused to swat. My thumb hovered over the thread. I put the phone face down on the table instead and walked away. The red badge stayed. I can outwait a storm, I told myself again. But this wasn't weather. It was fingerprints you can't see yet. The wall clock in my kitchen edged forward, loud as a metronome in an empty hall. 11:02 a.m. blinked on my lock screen when I checked it. Still no call from Gary. I left the group thread unopened. If there was a story in there, it could wait its turn to be proven wrong. The house held its breath, and I let it. The church foyer smelled like coffee and lemon cleaner. On the bulletin board, someone had pinned a bright flyer. Thursday supper, 6:30 p.m. I read it like a man checking a train schedule he was already late for. Inside, the fellowship hall ran on steam tables and politeness. Folding chairs had made their neat little neighborhoods. I kept to the edge, where the linoleum still remembered a basketball court. "Frank," Linda said, appearing with a stack of napkins. "Thank you for coming. Keep it low, please." "I'm here to eat and leave," I said. She nodded once, grateful and tired, and vanished into a cluster of casseroles. The supper line moved in a slow river. Deacon Miller slid in front of me like a barge, voice just a notch too bright. "Shame what happened to Edward," he said to the air. "Bottles get passed around without much thought these days." Forks clicked against trays. Heads turned. My turn to speak turned up right on time. "Thought is what I brought," I said. "Care takes notes. Gossip takes bows. A few people found their green beans fascinating." The deacon cleared his throat as if it were my fault it existed. Richard chose that moment to drift over, all calm concern and clean sleeves. "Dad," he said, like the word might iron out wrinkles. "Everyone's worried about Edward. We're just trying to understand." "You're trying to perform," I said. He faced the line, palms open to the crowd. "No one's accusing anyone. It's just, when a bottle gets given away without being checked." "I gave it sealed," I said. He tilted his head, patient as a pamphlet. "But did you confirm it was safe? You know your heart. You know Edward's. This is why we pay attention." "Tell them how much attention you're paying," I said. "Start with your phone." A rustle passed through the room the way wind passes a field. Everything bent the same direction for a second. Leah stood behind Richard, eyes on me, not him. "Did you check the seal?" she asked, almost a whisper. "I have eyes," I said, "and I have something better." I left it there because promises without proof only feed rumor. Richard smiled at the room, as if we'd just exchanged recipes. "Dad's old-fashioned," he said. "We just worry he didn't think it through." No shame in that. We all make mistakes. He knew exactly where the knife was while he called it a napkin. Shame flushed faces that weren't mine. A woman from the choir laid a hand on my arm. "We're praying for Edward," she said, careful to say only that. "I am too," I said, "and for the truth which hates crowds." Across the hall, a clock hung over the serving line, its red second hand sprinting when it wasn't needed. 7:42 p.m. Someone dropped a ladle. Gravy spattered like a map of counties I didn't visit anymore. "Frank," Linda said again, closer to pleading. "Not here. This is where it started," Richard said smoothly. "A public handoff. We can at least be honest in public." "Honesty is measured," I said. "You want it loud." His jaw twitched. There it was, the small tell in a man who hates anything he can't stage manage. "If you'd like to talk like adults, outside." "This is me talking like an adult," I said. "Inside. I won't help you make a scene I didn't order." He turned to the room instead of to me. "We love my father," he said, and the pronoun did a lot of work. "We're just hurting." Please give him grace. Grace is what people hand out when they want applause for not using the hammer. Leah stepped forward, fingers gripping a paper plate until it bent. Maybe we should wait, she said. Not for me, not for him, for the minute to end. Wait for what? Richard asked, too fast. For facts, she said. That word echoed better than any prayer. He didn't like it. He smoothed his face. I set my plate down untouched. Shame is a loud room. Resolve is a quiet chair, I said mostly to myself. But the closest 6 people heard it and looked like they weren't sure whether they should. Deacon Miller found another audience at the punch bowl. Linda called for a quick prayer, and chairs scraped together like a herd, forming a circle I wasn't invited to step into. That suited me fine. I stepped out into the hallway where the foyer's bulletin board listed bake sales and baptisms. A stack of unused mailing labels sat on the donation table, bright and blank. My fingers touched the top one and let it go. Outside the doors, evening had settled its hand on the parking lot. The glow from the fellowship hall windows made the cars look like they were listening. My phone lit in my palm. Gary, call me. I watched the screen until it went dark again, the letters burning into the afterimage. I didn't answer in the doorway. Some calls deserve a room with a shut door. Behind me, the hall buzzed like a hive, trying to decide whether it had a queen. I pocketed the phone and walked toward the steps, the word call, pulsing faintly against my leg like a small heart. I set the mason jar on the kitchen table where the light could find it. The whiskey looked innocent, as amber always does. I turned the jar once, slow, the way a man checks a hinge for wobble. The phone buzzed. Linda. I answered on the second ring. How is he? Better numbers, she said, clipped. Frank, do you have anything real yet? Wind rattled the kitchen window. Working on it. Because people are deciding their version. I don't have time to argue with a town. Neither do I. I looked at the jar. Real is coming. Her breath caught. Soon, soon. Then please make it today, she said softer, and hung up before I could promise more than the truth. The house went back to its old noises. Refrigerator hum, clock tick, the whisper of a curtain lifting and falling. I pulled a note card and wrote, Linda, anything real? Then I left space after the question for the answer I wanted. The phone lit again. Gary, 8:11 p.m. I answered standing. Talk to me. I ran it twice, he said. No warm-up. Same result. Your sample's hot. White snakeroot markers. Not a trace. A dose. I let the words seat themselves. Chain of custody? You gave me the jar last night. I logged it, refrigerated, split. One split is yours if they need it. I can email a summary now, full report in the morning. But Frank, this is not a kitchen mistake. Then we move it out of my kitchen, I said. Send the preliminary. I'll forward to a detective and get on their calendar. You're steady? I'm standing, I said. That's enough. Good. And Frank, don't meet with anyone except the badge. I mean that. I heard you. We hung up. The 8:11 p.m. timestamp still bright like a witness. Rumor is loud. Ink is quiet and heavier. I opened my laptop and kept it to a 3-sentence montage. Gary's email arrived. I forwarded it to detective. Reyes with the subject line, preliminary tox result, sample from sealed bottle. He replied inside 5 minutes. Come in tomorrow 2:30 p.m. and asked me to bring the jar and the packaging. I stood in the doorway to the living room, looking at the cigar tin where I'd stashed the recorder and the leftover cardboard from the shipping box. I put them in a grocery bag with the mason jar wrapped in a towel, like a newborn no one was allowed to touch. The phone buzzed again. Unknown. I let it roll to voicemail. The machine beeped to itself like a bird in another room. I texted Linda. Prelim shows poison. Meeting police tomorrow. 2:30. The dots on my screen pulsed and then stopped. A minute later, thank you. No punctuation. Enough said. I walked the house on instinct. Back door, side window, the front deadbolt I'd installed myself. The thread laid across the doorframe still sat there like a quiet tripwire only I respected. When I came back to the table, the mason jar caught a sliver of light from the street lamp. It looked like a small sun with all the warmth taken out. My phone vibrated with another message. Reyes, bring any packaging labels and keep the samples sealed. Don't discuss by phone. He followed it with a second line. Calendar invite sent. The invite bloomed on my screen. Tomorrow, 2:30 p.m. Station. I tapped set reminder and watched the square turn solid. A second notification slid in under it like a shadow stepping into the frame. Voicemail. One new. 0019. Richard. I didn't press play. The new appointment sat there above his message. 2 lines that explained my life in a picture. Where I'd be and what I wouldn't hear. I pulled out a card for the box and wrote, 8:11 p.m. Gary. Prelim. WSR markers. Forwarded to Reyes. Meeting set. I added, voicemail from Richard. Unheard. I blew on the ink as if breath could make the record truer. The kettle clicked off. I poured hot water over a tea bag and didn't drink it. The steam wrote questions on the air that didn't need answers tonight. The phone screen dimmed, brightened, dimmed. I set it face down and stood there a moment with my hand on the grocery bag, feeling the square corners of the box through paper. I wasn't going to win any speeches in a fellowship hall. I didn't need to. I needed signatures, seals, clocks that kept better time than a rumor. In the hall, the coat I'd wear tomorrow waited on its hook, ordinary as a witness with nothing to gain. I pictured the station, the glass door that sucks shut, the ping of the elevator, the fluorescent that buzzes differently from my kitchen lights. I pictured Reyes weighing the jar the way Gary had, as if weight could tell a story. The tea went cold. The clock tacked 1 minute closer to the part of the night when a town quiets enough to admit it's scared. I picked up the phone and accepted the calendar invite. A neat ping answered me. I let the voicemail sit. When a lie wants an audience, silence is a better chair. I turned out the kitchen light and left the lamp in the living room on, just enough glow to let me see the bag on the table if I woke up and wondered whether this part was real. The thread on the door gleamed like a hair caught in a sunbeam. I didn't step on it. In the dark, the house felt less like an empty box and more like a place where a man could hold his line. The phone lit my palm one last time. Tomorrow, 2:30 p.m. Station. Beneath it, voicemail from Richard, 1, still unopened. I tapped set reminder and slid the phone into my pocket. The calendar tone faded, and the voicemail stayed exactly where it belonged. The house had settled into that hour when a chair sounds like a person breathing. I set the grocery bag with the jar beside the door and sat at my desk with the note cards. The lamp threw a clean circle. I kept my fingers off my phone until it buzzed twice in a row like it had a conscience. Neighborhood thread, new image. I tapped. A screenshot filled the screen. My name at the top of a clipped message. Didn't care what happened to it. No date, no context, just poison for people who like it pre-chewed. Under it, a caption from a display name I knew too well. R. Dalton. Sad, but this is what I've dealt with. I read the line 3 times. It didn't get truer. Another bubble stacked over it. Leah. Dad, this doesn't look good. Please say something. I typed nothing. My thumb hovered like it wanted to be 16 again. The phone lit with a call. Linda, I answered. How's he doing? He's asleep, she said, hospital air whispering behind her. Then, Frank, Edward's sister just showed me a screenshot. It's all over that neighborhood thing. It makes you look careless, I said. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. People are scared. They're asking why you gave away a bottle you didn't care about. Can you please say something, anything? I'll say it to a badge, I said, not to a thread. Silence, then a tired scrape in her voice. Just don't make this worse. I won't. That's his department. Whose? You know whose. Frank. The intercom drowned her name. I have to go. The line clicked dead. I stared at the screenshot again. The cropping was neat. The text font matched. The lie wore my shoes. I opened the Notes app, shot the image to my archive, and dragged a note card in front of me. I wrote, thread, doctored clip, didn't care what happened to it. Then, in the margin, I added 2 words that felt like I was hammering stakes. Shipping label. Evidence wasn't a river. It was fence posts in hard ground. My phone hummed with a thread reply. Mrs. Conrad, I don't believe this, but people are talking. I didn't answer. Belief is private until people decide it isn't. A second text from Leah. Please, just one line to calm them. I typed, truth won't fit in a screenshot. I deleted it. I typed again. If truth can't fit in a screenshot, it doesn't shrink me, it shrinks the lie. I deleted that too. The right words don't belong to the wrong room. I saved the image to a folder labeled with the only thing that mattered, to Reyes. My phone shivered with a calendar banner that slid over the smear like a hand over a candle. Tomorrow, 2:30 p.m., station. The ping landed, clean and final. I tapped OK and let that be my reply to the world. Heart pulse. It isn't just poison in a jar, it's poison in the air. I wrote that sentence on a card and tucked it behind the others. You don't beat fog by shouting at it. You beat it by finding the road and staying on it. Another message chimed. Unknown. Own your mistake, old man. Then the thread refreshed with a row of thumbs and sad faces. I set the phone down, screen dark, and went back to my pencil. Family tension comes in two sizes, shouts and edits. Tonight it was edits. Leah again. I'm sorry. I know this isn't you. I'm just tired. I thumbed a reply. Me too. Bring your tired to 2:30 tomorrow if you can. The room will be honest. I didn't hit send. She didn't need my invitation to stand between us. I printed nothing. I didn't need new paper in the house. I took the note card with shipping label and slid it under the clip with the doctored line so they'd glare at each other in the drawer. If truth wanted to fight, it could start in my desk. The kitchen clock ticked on the other side of the wall. I heard tires hiss on wet pavement out front, the kind of passing that feels like someone reconsidering you and moving on. I stood, stretched the ache out of my back, and watched the thread thumb by without me. The phone buzzed one more time. Richard. Silence reads like guilt, Dad. I didn't type it, but I thought it hard enough to count. Noise reads like fear, son. I took the screenshot, tagged it with the same word I'd given the appointment, and dropped it into the folder. The calendar ping blinked again, not because it needed to, but because my thumb brushed the screen while I slid the phone onto the desk. Tomorrow, 2:30 p.m., station. I let the glow fade and the room returned to regular darkness. I stacked the note cards, rubber banded them, and placed them next to the grocery bag with the jar and the cardboard. The bag looked like any other bag on any other night. My life had never been more ordinary and never more audited. I lifted the phone once more to read Leah's last message. I'll ask for the afternoon off. I didn't write thank you. I didn't write be careful. I put the phone face down, held the desk edge until the pulse in my fingers matched the second hand in the other room, and let the thread move on without me. I took one last look at the screenshot on the lock screen, my name over words I didn't say, clicked save, and slid the card into the box. I didn't press reply. I pressed the desk lamp off. The station glass sucked shut behind me, and the lobby air had that dry clean smell of paper that's been handled too many times. I kept the grocery bag close and walked straight to the evidence window. Purpose? The clerk asked without looking up. Handoff for Detective Reyes. Scheduled. She slid a tray out. Items. I set the cigar tin, the folded cardboard with the shipping label still taped to it, and finally the mason jar, wrapped in a towel I'd washed twice, like that could wash off what it carried. She looked up then. Jar stays sealed? Hasn't been opened since my friend split the sample. His chain notes are inside. She nodded once. You'll get a receipt. The tray disappeared through the slot. Somewhere behind the counter, a stapler thumped like a slow heartbeat. A phone rang. The clerk didn't answer it. She reached for a rubber stamp and stopped midair as someone called her name. I watched her set the stamp down. My gut tightened. Ma'am, I said steady, please don't set that anywhere dirty. She blinked, returned to her lane, and brought the stamp back to the page with a clean pad. We're careful, sir. Good habit, I said. A door buzzed and Reyes appeared, tie slightly loosened, eyes awake. Mr. Brooks. With me, his office was the size of a walk-in closet, with a window that looked at a brick wall. He closed the door and pointed at two chairs that should have been one. "We're opening a formal chain," he said, tone all edge and no drama. "Your jar, packaging, and that cardboard are logged. I'll courier the liquid to the state lab today. You'll see a copy of the receipt." "Good," I said. "I'm ready for someone else to carry this." He studied my face a second. "Don't engage with your son. If he reaches out, let it go to voicemail. Forward anything. Don't answer anything." "I can do that." He nodded toward the bag. "Anything else?" I slid the recorder onto his desk. "Audio from my visit to Richard's kitchen. He didn't confess. He also didn't deny. We'll image it," he said, gloving up to lift it like an egg. "Chain of custody matters more than a loud truth." "Understood." He scribbled a note and looked up. "You okay?" Heart pulse found me before I could dodge it. "I've never been so relieved to give something away." "Then let the system take the weight," he said. "We'll be in touch as soon as the lab log's arrival." He walked me back to the window just as the clerk slid the small white form across the counter. "Albany PD evidence receipt," sat in block letters. Beneath it, one neat line of time that mattered more than any rumor. 2:37 p.m. I let my eyes rest on the digits, once. Then I folded the copy and tucked it into my inner pocket like a passport. "Remember," Reyes said at the door, "do not meet him." "Noted," I said. The hallway hummed under bad fluorescence. Leah stepped out from a side bench like she'd been rehearsing this angle. "Samuel," she said, eyes flicking to my pocket. "Did you turn it all over?" "All of it." She swallowed. "Promise me you won't make it uglier." "I won't make it quieter," I said. "Law, not noise. That's my promise." People think silence equals guilt. Sometimes it equals respect for the process. I kept my hands at my sides. "You coming with me next time?" She hesitated. "If they ask." "They'll ask," I said, and gave her one small nod I hoped could hold both of us upright. Outside, autumn had a sharper edge than the forecast. I stood under the station awning and let the traffic breathe past. My phone vibrated in my palm. "Ethan, face to face, today. No dad, no time, just instructions." I didn't reply. I took a screenshot. His name, the line, the time tucked into the corner like a witness that didn't blink. I dropped the image into 2 Reyes and closed the folder like a door. The phone buzzed again. "Ethan. Pick a place. 15 minutes. I typed nothing. The evidence receipt pressed against my ribs like a reminder not to improvise. The station glass sighed as someone came and went. I held the door open for a man with an armful of files and stepped back into the shade. My hand hovered over the keyboard long enough to write the line I needed to hear, more than he needed to read. "I meet truth, not ambushes." I didn't send it. Some truths are better kept as spine than speech. A gust lifted the corner of the paper bag by my shoes. I pinned it with my toe and checked the lock screen again. The screenshot sat where I'd left it, quiet and obedient. The 2:37 p.m. digit still lived behind my jacket. The jar, finally, was someone else's problem. I turned toward the lot, phone face down in my palm, and let the text sit like bait. I didn't bite. I didn't run either. I walked, the way you do when a day has already decided what it is, and your job is to carry it to sundown without dropping the important parts. The phone vibrated once more, then went still. I took one picture of the sky because sometimes a man needs to remember there's more than brick and rumor. Then I put the phone away and headed for my truck, the screenshot filed, and the meeting request unanswered, exactly where both belonged. The doorbell cut through the late afternoon quiet like a drill bit catching metal. I glanced at the wall clock in the hall, close enough to 5 that the light had turned yellow on the floorboards. Through the glass I saw a man in a courier jacket balancing a clipboard on a package the size of a legal envelope. "Samuel Brooks?" he asked when I opened the door. "That's me." He lifted the clipboard. "Certified delivery. Requires signature." "What am I signing for?" I said, and let the door swing only as wide as my shoulder. "Letter from Caldwell and Deneen, attorneys at law." He tapped the label with his pen. "Time sensitive." I looked at the envelope, heavy paper, window showing a firm name I already disliked. "I sign for deliveries," I said, keeping my voice even, "not for my conscience." He blinked, then smirked like he'd heard worse. Signature or I mark refusal. I scrawled my name, making sure to keep the envelope square in his hands until the ink dried. He slid it across the gap. The paper had that expensive grain to it, the kind meant to make you feel smaller. Almost missed the cutoff, he added, pen clicking. Would have been void if I'd been later. Noted. He trotted down the steps. The van door thumped shut, and my porch went quiet again. Everything okay over there? Mrs. Hollis called from the walk next door, grocery bags straining her wrists. She angled her chin toward the envelope. Looked official. Junk mail with a suit, I said. You sure? Folks get nervous when official people start stopping by. A cabbage rolled in one of her bags. I stepped over, saved it from the edge, and handed it back. Mrs. Hollis, I said gently, if anyone asks, you saw a delivery man drop a letter and leave. She peered at the address window, curious, then caught herself. Well, hope it's not trouble. It's just paper. I lifted the envelope. Paper behaves if you handle it right. Inside, I set it on the kitchen table and did not break the seal. The flap stared at me like a dare. I set my phone beside it, opened the camera, and framed the bold line that showed through the window. Respond by 5 p.m. tomorrow. Click. One shot so I wouldn't have to remember. The phone buzzed before I could step away. Reyes, cell. I'm at my desk. Status? I sent the photo. Seconds later, he called. Do not respond, he said. Photograph the outside, keep it sealed, and put it with the others. I'll log it in the morning. I've got the window line captured, I said. It's a countdown dressed as courtesy. Good. That's a pressure tactic. If they call, don't pick up. If they show, don't open. If they leave anything else, document. I'll swing by before noon. Understood. After he hung up, the screen flashed a new message. Leah, please don't poke the bear tonight. Whatever that is, let it sit. Threats used to move me faster, I typed, then erased it. I tried again. I'm not poking, I'm documenting. I erased that too. I settled on, I'm following Reyes, and hit send. She replied with a single bubble. Thank you. The envelope sat where I'd set it, patient as a snake. I slid open the desk drawer and pulled out the shipping label from Richard's gift. Side by side on the table, the two rectangles could have been cousins, the first step in the current shove. My phone buzzed again. Unknown. Cease and desist. Retract the false statements. Confirm in writing by 5 p.m. tomorrow or face litigation. The text arrived like a copy of what was on the letterhead. I took another photo, screen glowing, the respond by 5 p.m. tomorrow line visible on the envelope below it. The picture told a story better than any paragraph could. Private threat, public paper. Heart pulse rose up, simple and clean. Fear used to be a whip. Today, it's a level. I breathed until my hands stopped trying to choose between opening and burning. The doorbell rang again. One quick push. I left the envelope and checked the porch camera through the peephole by habit. Empty steps, wind in the maple. Someone testing whether I'd twitch. I didn't. The phone lit. Caldwell and Deneen, a number with more nines than a poker hand. I let it roll to voicemail. A transcript started to populate. We represent Richard Brooks. Your recent actions constitute. I stopped the preview and forwarded the missed call log to Reyes with one line. They're swinging. I'm still standing. Leah again. If you don't answer them, won't it look like you're hiding? I typed, I answer courts, not threats. She dotted, then stopped. The dots felt like a conversation running out of breath. I lifted the envelope to the lamp and angled it. Through the faint opaqueness, I could make out block paragraphs and a signature that looked like a scribble trying to look expensive. I set it down unopened, exactly where the light caught the window line. Mrs. Hollis's dog barked twice out back. I listened for footsteps that weren't there. The house settled. Paper whispered under my fingers. I picked up the phone, opened to Reyes, and added the two photos and the missed call screenshot. The folder felt heavier, even in pixels. Richard didn't text. He didn't need to. The counsel letter said enough without saying anything true. I set a clean index card beside the envelope and wrote, Counsel letter received, 4:56-ish. Respond by 5 p.m. tomorrow. I underlined tomorrow once. Then I slid the card into the stack, turned the envelope so the bold line faced me, and took one last photograph. Kitchen clock in the background, letter in the foreground, my hand not opening what wanted to be opened. The file chime confirmed the upload. I placed the envelope dead center on the table like a specimen you don't disturb until the right tech is in the room. The house held its breath with me. I let it out first. I left the letter unopened and the window line visible. Respond by 5 p.m. tomorrow, and turned off the kitchen light. The phone still warm in my pocket where Reyes could find the truth without me tearing anything loose. Saturday put a thin light on the strip mall. Dry cleaners, pawnbroker, notary public, taped crooked on a glass door. I pushed in and laid my affidavit on the counter. Photo ID, the notary said, all business. I slid my license over. Samuel Brooks, timeline statement. She skimmed the first line, checked my face against plastic, and turned the paper so the signature line faced me. Sign within the box. My pen didn't wobble. She positioned the embosser, jaw set, and pressed. The seal bit the page with a soft click that felt like a gear catching. I do better under oath than under threat, I said to no one in particular. She slid a small red stamp beside the raised seal, dated it, and nodded at the copy I'd brought. Keep that one clean. Don't staple through the seal. Wouldn't dream of it. Outside, the air had a metallic edge. I tucked the original flat into a manila folder, the copy behind it, and headed for the station. At Reyes's window, a clerk took the folder through the slot. Affidavit for Detective Reyes, I said. He's expecting it. Systems, hang on. She tapped keys, frowned. Somewhere a printer beeped like it had swallowed a paperclip. Intake just went down, 1 minute. Clock's not my friend today, I said. It'll post, she said, tapping again. We'll email the receipt tonight. Make sure the seal's pictured, I added. That stamp's the only reason I'm sleeping. She lifted the affidavit carefully. We'll image the seal. My phone buzzed. Reyes, got your heads up. Do not respond to counsel. I'll mark chain when system's back. I texted back. Under oath. Original stays with me. On the walk to the lot, the phone lit again. Leah, could you post a short statement? Something like, no accusations, just cooperating. People are scared. I stopped under the awning and typed, truth doesn't need PR. Deleted it. Tried again. A soft statement becomes a soft target. Deleted that too. I finally sent, I'll speak in the right room, on the record. 3 dots. Then, okay, just be careful. I am, I said aloud, more for me than the phone. Back home, noon slid into afternoon. I set the unopened lawyer letter exactly where I'd left it last night, window line still glaring. Respond by 5 p.m. tomorrow. The manila folder went beside it. I opened my fireproof box, made a new divider, affidavit, original, and slid the embossed page in like a tile into a wall. The copy stayed with me. Caldwell's number flashed across the screen. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, I played the first line on speaker and stopped it cold. Cease and desist. I forwarded the log to Reyes and thumbed a note under it. Missed on purpose. The house kept its low mechanical choir, fridge hum, clockwork breathing. I brewed coffee I didn't need, stared at nothing I couldn't fix, and answered nobody who hadn't earned it. At 4:40, Leah again. If you don't answer them by 5, they'll say you're hiding. My silence isn't consent, it's discipline, I texted back. No reply. I took the copy of the affidavit from the folder and read my own words once through. Names, times, places, no adjectives, just the spine of a month that had tried to bend me. A calendar ping sounded from the tablet on the counter. 5 p.m. reminder I'd set the moment the letter landed. I propped the copy of the affidavit over the letter, not touching the seal to the envelope, just a roof over a rattle. The mantel clock answered the tablet with its own small authority. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The hour hand kissed the Roman numeral. I lifted my phone, took a single photo. Affidavit raised seal visible. The letter window with its printed dare half covered. Then I texted Reyes. Filed and sealed. Heart pulse, right on time. For once, my breath didn't race the clock. I left the envelope closed, the affidavit copy on top like a hand on a shoulder, and turned off the lamp. The kitchen settled into evening with the kind of quiet that means you've done what you can. Tomorrow's noise could wait behind glass. I saw them through the bevel of the glass before the knock. Richard on the top step in a clean jacket. A younger man half a step behind with his phone already upright and hungry. I opened the inner door and left the storm door latched. "State your business," I said. "Dad," Richard started, voice pitched for the neighborhood. "I'm here to talk like adults. 2 minutes." Behind him, the junior associate eased the phone higher, catching the angle that makes refusal look rude. "Per Detective Reyes," I said. "No off-record meetings." Richard smiled like he'd expected the line. "This is off-record only in your head. You owe people an explanation." "I owe the truth to the right room." Across the lawn, Mrs. Hollis paused with her hose. The water arced and darkened the geraniums. She shaded her eyes with a wet hand. The street listened. The junior tilted the phone. "Just to document your willingness," he murmured, "not to me." "Film this," I said, letting my breath settle. "No" is a complete sentence. Richard's smile thinned. "You filed that affidavit late," he said to the glass instead of my face. "Clerk system pinged after hours. Looks like you're hiding behind paperwork again." My phone buzzed on the hall table, tinny and bright. I glanced down. A banner from the clerk system. "Filing received after hours. Algorithm speaking without context." I didn't open it. The screen glowed like a fake friend. From the driveway, Leah hurried up, hair pinned in a rush, palms out. "Richard, Sam, just 2 minutes, please, for me." I met her eyes through the screen. "Not without a witness and a record." "This is a witness," Richard said, lifting his chin toward the camera. "And you're making a scene." "Correction," I said. "You're staging one." The house pinged again, my calendar block sliding across the lock screen. "Hearing, Wednesday, 10 a.m. The junior's phone shifted to catch it through the glass like a trophy. I stepped sideways to block his line. "2 minutes, Leah urged, voice small. "Say you'll listen." "Leah," I said, softer than I felt, "I won't step into a trap you'll spend years stepping out of." "Trap?" Richard scoffed. "It's called reconciliation." "Off camera," I said, "under oath and with counsel. Otherwise, it's not reconciliation. It's content." He moved closer, breath fogging a circle on the storm door. "If you cared about Edward, you'd stop hiding." "I was at his bedside while you rehearsed your lines," I said. "Back up from my door." Across the lawn, the hose hissed and stopped. Mrs. Hollis called, uneasy. "You ought to just hear him, Sam." "I'll hear him on Wednesday," I said, eyes on Richard, "where people swear and lies die." The junior edged to the rail to frame me with the Don Tosolisic decal. Optics. Always optics. Heart pulse pressed clean and steady. "I've opened worse doors. I won't open this trap." Richard flattened his hand to the glass. "Everyone sees you stonewalling. Don't say I didn't try." "You didn't," I said. "You performed." He flicked his eyes at the cameraman. "Got it?" "Got it," the junior said, pleased. "Then get off my porch," I said, and thumbed the latch. The storm door held, a quiet spine between us. "Final time, Richard." Leave Leah reach for the handle. I shook my head once. "No." Her hand dropped. Okay." Richard's voice went cool, like an elevator closing. "We'll tell the story you won't." "You've been trying," I said, "and the story keeps telling you back." I closed the storm door, then the inner. The click of the deadbolt felt like a sentence ending in a period, not a shout. A thin shape slid under the storm sweep a beat later, paper whispering against the mat. I waited, counting to 5, then crouched. The note sat eye level on the floor, black marker pushed hard. He wouldn't even listen. R. Behind it, where I'd moved it this morning to remind me what I refused to take the bait on. The unopened counsel letter lay like a prop from a play I wasn't in. I didn't touch either. I took a single photo. Note on top, lawyer envelope beneath. My phone screen dimming with, "Hearing, Wednesday 10 a.m. fading out." Leah's text arrived a breath later. "I'm sorry. I thought maybe." I typed, "You don't owe me sorry for his theater." Deleted it. Sent. Stay clear of their camera. From the porch came footsteps retreating, then the low buzz of the junior's laughter. My phone's earlier banner still hovered in notifications. Filing received after hours. The kind of half-truth that breeds whole lies. Mrs. Hollis's door creaked. "Sam?" she called through the screen of neighborly worry. "Everything all right?" "I'm fine," I said, steady. "I'm letting paper be paper and doors be doors." I set the phone on the hall table and left the note exactly where it lay. Marker strokes loud and simple. A little billboard for the lie they needed. The house exhaled with me. I didn't pick it up. I wouldn't give it that. I left it on the mat, unopened and waiting, the camera angle of their story facing the wrong house. The porch still smelled faintly of marker. Richard's note lay where I'd left it, bold strokes on cheap paper, beside the lawyer envelope I still hadn't opened. The house knew its marks now. What to step over, what to ignore. Leah called before sundown. "It's everywhere," she said, no greeting, just the shake in her voice. "The porch video. People are saying you were cruel." "I refused a trap," I said. "That's not cruelty. That's adult supervision." "Then say that online," she pushed. A short post. "Happy to talk in the proper venue. Something. I won't try a case in comments. It's not a case. It is to them." Silence stretched, then smaller. "To me, it's dinner tables and side eyes. I'm tired, Sam." "Then rest," I said. "Let the noise tire itself out." I wanted to add that noise never gets tired. I didn't. After we hung up, I took the trash down to the curb because it was Monday, and I am an animal of habit. 2 doors down, Mrs. Hollis and Tom Alvarez stood shoulder to shoulder over a phone, faces blue lit. Tinny audio bled across the pavement. My own voice. "No" is a complete sentence. Tom shook his head. "Cold, man." Guy wanted 2 minutes. I lifted the can and said it softly. "Views aren't witnesses," I said. Mrs. Hollis's jaw tightened. "You could have at least opened the door, Sam." "I did," I said. "The one that matters is on Wednesday." Tom snorted. "Court won't save you from character." "Good thing character doesn't need saving," I said. "It needs remembering." They didn't answer. The phone replayed the clip again, shorter this time. My words cut from the "per Detective Reyes" part. Less context, more story. Heart pulse. Let them talk. Tomorrow the seal will answer. On the way back up the walk, my phone chimed. The calendar ping that had been haunting my pockets. Hearing, tomorrow 10 a.m. I let it glow, then dim. I put the can away, rinsed my hands in the cold spigot, and watched the last light catch in the wet. Inside, the house gave me its usual choir. Fridge hum, hallway clock. I set water to boil for tea and stood with the mug while the kettle roared and settled. The lawyer envelope and Richard's note stared at me from the rug like 2 stage props waiting for their cue. A car slowed outside. I heard the tires crunch at the edge of my lawn, a door open, then footsteps, measured, official. A neutral knock. Not Richard's rap, not Leah's flutter. Something that came attached to a form. I opened the inner door and kept the storm latched. A man in a windbreaker held a thick motion packet in a clear sleeve. He didn't smile. "Service of motion," he said. "Per counsel." "I'm served," I said. He peeled blue painter's tape from his wrist, tore 2 lengths, and fixed the packet at eye level on the glass with practiced, respectful hands. The tape squeaked. He took a quick photo for his records. "Have a good evening," he said. "You too," I said, because manners are marrow. He walked back to his car. I watched the taillights bloom and fade. Leah texted, "Did someone just tape something to your door? Neighbor group says process server on your steps." "Yes," I wrote. "Motion to pretend paper is louder than truth." I deleted it. I sent, "Motion packet, taped, I'm fine." 3 dots. Then nothing. I stared at the packet through the glass. The first page showed black bars of bold. Headings, not words I intended to feed myself tonight. The blue tape bisected my reflection. I unlocked the storm door, peeled the packet free, and carried it inside without peeling the sleeve. On the hall rug, I set it unopened beneath Richard's note. Grainy marker over glossy legalese. One lie laid on another. The kettle clicked off. The house went quiet enough to hear it. I poured water over a bag and walked the rooms once. Locks, windows, the thread at the front threshold I'd never bothered to remove. Still there. Still telling the simplest story. Gone if touched. The phone chimed again, the same calendar ping as before, as if to underline itself. Hearing. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. I let it sit on the table, screen bright and then dark, like a lighthouse that only signals one ship. Leah called again. "They're saying the affidavit will be struck for being late," she blurted. "Is that possible?" "They can say it," I said. "Tomorrow, the time will say otherwise." "What if the judge never sees it?" "She will," I said, "because it exists, and it was sworn, and it has a seal." "You sound very sure." "If I lose my voice tonight," I said, "I won't have it in the morning." "Okay," she exhaled. "I'll stop reading comments." "That alone could save a life," I said. She laughed once, sad. "Good night." "Good night." I walked back to the door and looked at the motion packet under the note, the blue tape edges now curling where heat met adhesive. I did not reach for it. I picked up my mug instead and sipped, letting the heat sit in my chest like a small argument I intended to win tomorrow. Outside, a gust rattled the mailbox lid. Down the block, someone dragged a bin back up a driveway. I let the house breathe. The phone lit without sound. Hearing, tomorrow, 10 a.m. One more time, like a promise. I looked at the door and didn't reach for the packet. Tomorrow would be for opening things. Tonight was for keeping them shut. The hallway outside hearing room 2B smelled like floor wax and coffee gone cold. I took a seat in the second row, aisle end, where I could stand without bumping knees. Edward sat to my left, color back in his face, Linda guarding him with a knitting bag like armor. Leah slid into the row behind us, eyes rimmed but steady. In the last seats, Mrs. Hollis and Tom tried not to look like they were looking. Over the bench, the wall clock tipped to 10 a.m. and gave a soft click. The clerk called the case. The room straightened. "Judge, appearances?" DA named himself for the state. Caldwell stood, smooth as marble. "For Mr. Dalton." He didn't look at me. That was a new trick. Used to be he tried to stare holes. The clerk swore in Detective Reyes first. He spoke crisp, how the bottle came, how the sample moved, what the lab confirmed. No drama, just rail ties laid clean. Caldwell objected to half of it. The judge let the ones with weight through and left the rest on the floor. Then Gary took the stand. "White snakeroot," he said, calm. "Not conjecture, tested." Caldwell tried to pull him into a debate about taste and color. Gary blinked at him like a mechanic asked if oil is wet. When they finished, Caldwell rose with his real pitch. "Your Honor, before anything further, we move to strike Mr. Brooks's affidavit for late filing. The opposing party has waged a public smear while hiding behind paperwork." My chest stayed quiet. Let the paper breathe for me. The judge turned to the clerk. "Do we have intake on the affidavit?" The clerk reached for a manila folder, pulled a single sheet, and lifted it eye level for the bench. The embossed court seal caught the fluorescence and threw a clean oval of light. "Clerk, affidavit of Samuel A. Brooks, sworn and received yesterday at 4:18 p.m. Signed at counter, sealed at intake." She set it in the evidence tray with a little respectful tap. "Exhibit admitted." Caldwell tried to salvage. "The system pinged after hours. Judge, ping is not a filing. Motion denied." In the gallery, Tom exhaled a word he'd have to apologize for at church. Mrs. Hollis pressed a napkin to her mouth. I didn't turn. Caldwell pivoted to the only story left. "Mr. Brooks and my client are estranged. There is motive for dramatization." He faced me. "Sir, would you agree you've ignored your son for years?" I stood, palms easy on the rail. "No." Caldwell. "You told him no on a porch viewed thousands of times." "No to a staged encounter," I said. "Optics don't testify. People do." A ripple moved through the room. The judge lifted two fingers, enough to settle it. "Mr. Brooks," she said, Keep to the facts. Yes, Your Honor. The fact is, the seal says the affidavit was on time, and the witnesses say the whiskey wasn't. Noted, she said. Sit. Caldwell swallowed his next flourish when he caught Reyes watching him like a man measuring lumber. The defense rested its objections and found the basket empty. The judge faced the table. Mr. Dalton, Richard stood with that careful humility men put on like a new shirt. He glanced toward the gallery. For the first time in months, his eyes found mine and didn't bounce off. Your Honor, Caldwell cut in, my client maintains Mr. Dalton can speak for himself. The judge's tone could sand wood. Richard took a breath like a swimmer about to go under. He looked at Edward. He looked at Leah. He looked everywhere but the seal shining from the tray. Then he faced me. No rehearsal now, just a son with his mask slipping. I'm sorry, he said. The words didn't scratch the room. They landed. I'm sorry, Dad. I sent the bottle. I let it happen. I told myself it would force a conversation. It almost killed him. His voice shook on the last word. He turned to Edward. I'm sorry, sir. You could hear the clock again. The judge didn't smile. Apology on the record is noted, she said. It is not disposition. The court sets this matter for sentencing and further proceedings on the criminal charges already filed. She looked to the clerk. Next date? Monday, the 24th, 9 a.m., the clerk said, pen poised. Caldwell tried one last sandbag. Your Honor, my client. Save it for the next date, she said. We're done for today. I didn't look at the back row, but I felt the pivot. The neighbor's quiet, the tilt of Leah's shoulders, the small sound Linda made when fear leaves but hasn't decided where to go. Edward squeezed my forearm, that old handshake that says more than paper ever will. Caldwell gathered his files like a magician whose hat has given up. Richard sat down hard and stared at the table edge until the deputy tapped his shoulder. As the clerk reached to collect the exhibits, the seal flashed once more in the light, brighter than any camera. I let the picture fix itself in my head and said nothing. Sometimes the win is the silence you keep. By mid-afternoon, the courthouse air had burned off my clothes, but the day still clung to me. I stood in my front hall with the door propped and the rug rolled back. A man in county khaki knelt by the outlet beneath the console table. Cameras inside the charger, he said, threading the cord. Motion alerts on. You'll get a clip and a still with time across the top. That little red arm, he tapped the pinprick LED, shows it's watching. I like machines that admit their job, I said. He smiled, then shouldered his bag and stepped to the porch where his partner was fastening an exterior dome beneath the eave. They worked without chatter. Clicks, a soft drill whine, the ladder joints knocking once like a polite cough. My phone buzzed. Reyes. Door tech treating you right? He asked. They install like surgeons, I said. Good. Two things. One, DA's victim services will reach out to Edward. Medical bills, counseling if needed. Two, we've issued a no-contact advisory. Until sentencing, your son routes communication through counsel only. If he shows up, call it in. Don't be the brave version of yourself. Today, I'll be the careful one. He paused. Minute order just posted. Clerk set sentencing. Monday, 9 a.m. I'll swing a print by. I'll be here, I said. After the text left, I drove 2 streets over to Edward's. He and Linda sat on the porch swing. New chain, no creak. You look like a man who slept and didn't, he said. Accurate. Linda patted the cushion beside her. Reyes called, said there's a victim liaison who speaks human. There is, I said. They'll help you untie the hospital knots. Edward watched a bird skitter across the rail. I don't want a payday, he said. You're not asking for one, I said. You're asking the mess to pay for the mop. He nodded. We let the quiet do a lap around the porch. Frank, he said, lowering his voice. You sure you don't want me in that room Monday? I'm sure I do, I said. But your being alive is already testimony. He grinned with only the left side of his mouth. Then I'll testify by sitting where you can see me. On the way home, Leah called. I'm outside, she said. Can I? Come in, I said. She stood in my hall with her hands wrapped in her sleeves, looking smaller than yesterday. The new charger blinked in the corner like a metronome, keeping time for a song we hadn't learned yet. I wanted to say I heard him, she said. In court. It wasn't enough, but I heard him. It was the right sentence in the wrong mouth, I said. I keep trying to make it make sense. She laughed once without humor. It doesn't. Don't bend the world to fit it, I said. Let the edges stay sharp. She looked at the table, at the clerk's envelope Reyes had slid across it a few minutes earlier. The blue ink minute order peeked over the flap. Can we have dinner? She asked. Not to discuss strategy, just to eat and remember how to talk. After Monday, I said. Because optics, she said, failing at lightness. Because we're not safe for each other yet, I said. We let the process work. I hate the process. I did too, I said, until it started working. She stared at the envelope again. You could come by tonight. Just family. No phones. We don't litigate in kitchens, I said, softer than it reads. We're two people who love the same history, and we're going to keep it from becoming evidence. She blinked hard, swallowed and nodded. Okay, Monday. Monday, I repeated. We stood in the doorway the way people do when there are 10 more words and none of them are better than leaving. She hugged me, quick, shoulders only, and stepped back onto the porch. Call if you need anything, she said. I've got a house full of machines that call faster than I do, I said. I'll be all right. After she drove off, Reyes tapped at the screen door. He held out the printout, one page with the county header, the judge's name, and a single line that mattered. Sentencing set, Monday, 9 a.m. The clerk's stamp sat in the corner like a period. Paper made useful, I said. Paper that holds, he said. I'll see you there. And Frank? Yeah? Don't open any more gifts. I huffed something close to a laugh. All right, detective. Dusk took the edges off the street. Inside, I set the minute order beside the sealed exhibit copy envelope, both squared to the wood grain. The house hummed its regular song, fridge, clock, the soft relay click from the camera when I crossed its cone. My phone chimed, the same insistent tone from yesterday. I flipped it over. Sentencing, Monday 9 a.m. I pressed a finger to the screen until the vibration stopped and the date held steady like a nail-driven flush. Heart pulse. Justice isn't loud, it holds. In the kitchen, I washed a single plate, dried it, and put it back in the same slot I've used for years. I turned off the porch light and checked the locks, and let my hand rest on the deadbolt a second longer than necessary. Back in the hall, I stood in the doorway and looked at what the room had become. Paper that protects, machines that remember, a chair that waits. The phone offered one more calendar ping, and I didn't argue. I set it face down next to the envelopes and reached up to click off the hall light. Darkness stepped forward, and the only thing that kept its color was the red arm of the new camera's LED, watching the entry with a patient eye. I closed the door. The house held.